Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël.
You believe Democrats will never see the president's tax returns?
Oh, no, never. No, nor should they. Keep in mind that that's an issue that was already litigated during the election. Voters knew the president could have given his tax returns. They knew that he didn't, and they elected him anyway, which, of course, is what drives the Democrats crazy.
Responded to that defiant talk from the Trump administration with, a new deadline. The House Ways and Means Committee is now giving the IRS until April 23rd, 9 days from now, to turn over Donald Trump's tax returns. But there are already signs of continued recalcitrance, with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin calling the deadline arbitrary. Back with me, Midwin Charles, Paul Butler, Jill Wine-Banks. Jill, Midwin and I were talking in the break. This is sort of like the parent saying, you have to clean your room or else. And then the kid doesn't clean the room and they go, okay, I'm going to give you another hour to clean your room. I mean, the Democrats have essentially let them blow the deadline to produce the tax returns per the law. So if Donald Trump violates it again, if he orders the IRS commissioner or Steve Mnuchin says to the IRS commissioner, we're not doing it, what is it that Democrats are going to do next? Or what should they do next?
I think they have to act soon. I don't mind that they've given extra time. That may be good in terms of the public relations value. They're being fair. They're giving them time. To the extent they're saying it takes time, which of course it doesn't. These are filed returns that could easily be accessed and turned over. And the law is very clear. Section of the code says, when asked by Congress, they shall turn over. Shall means shall. It doesn't mean we'll think about it or we can. And the punishment is actually a felony. It's 5 years in jail for any employee who does not produce something that is part of his job to produce. So there are serious consequences. Now, the problem is who's going to enforce the criminal penalties in this administration that instead says, for example, to someone, you could violate the law by closing the southern border and I'll give you a pardon if you do it. Don't worry about it. That's the danger to this country right now. It's really a terrible thing. And I just want to go back to something about the spying, because it's important to know that Barr has been criticized by the current Inspector General for spying that took place, true spying, on average Americans in a mass data collection effort without any targeting, without any probable cause, which is very different than having a surveillance pursuant to probable cause approved by a court.
Yeah.
So that's an important difference.
Very important to put forward that. Paul Butler, so sort of same to you. Jill Wine-Banks mentioned the law, Section 6103 of the tax code. Treasury officials shall turn over the tax returns upon written request of the chair of either Congressional Tax Committee or the federal employee who runs Congress's Joint Committee on Taxation. Donald Trump said this week there is no law. He said there is no law. No law exists. His Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, who answered the question who was asked to someone else, the IRS commissioner, says, I do intend to follow the law, but I think these raise very, very complicated legal issues. They're constitutional issues. Then my obligation is to make sure, for the purposes of precedent, taxpayer protection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If they simply defy this law and say, we ain't following it, who's going to stop them? Who's going to make them turn over those tax returns?
So the way the procedure should work is that the committee will then hold the Treasury Secretary in contempt They go to the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia to try to get him prosecuted, which would mean he has to sit in jail until he produces the tax reports or he gets sentenced to a term of years. The problem is that the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia is an appointee of Donald Trump. So whether she would do what the law requires her to do is an open question.
And there you have it. The challenge is that Donald Trump has so seeded the judiciary and the Department of Justice and the Treasury Department and the IRS and et cetera, with his own people, all of whom have proven that loyalty to Trump is their prime directive, right? That's what they're going to do, is do what he says.
It's frightening.
Then is there a rule of law if he can violate the law? His experience is that his father committed just rampant, hiding of his taxes. And that's how they got to be rich. His sister evaded any inquiry into dodging taxes. She's retired. The experience that the Trumps have had in life is that they get away with whatever they don't want to do. They get away with it. Who's going to enforce the laws? And if they can't be enforced, then do we even have laws? Don't we have a king?
That's an excellent question, and I'm glad you bring it up, because I think what we see, at least from the Democrats, is a sort of laissez-faire approach with respect to what's happening. They need to kind of wake up and recognize that at this very moment they are a co-equal branch of government. They have to. It is their job. It is their constitutional duty to hold the presidency accountable.
What is the
They
mechanism?
need to step it up. Number one, you saw in the clip you played that this guy had sort of, it was litigated during the, what are you talking about? We didn't have a trial. That's a litigation.
No.
It's a full-blown trial with discovery and witnesses and what have you. We didn't have that. Democrats need to step up. They need to outline specifically why they want to see Donald Trump's taxes and go for it. Hold this guy in contempt.
We'll see. Really quickly, Jill, pin. What is your pin?
It's a tic-tac-toe pin for all of the games that are being played by Mnuchin and Barr and Trump.
Well, one side,
dangling pardons and everything else.
And girl, one side is playing with cards all up their sleeves, and the other side is going, let's play by the rules. This is going to be great.
It is Monday, the 15th of April of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. That's right, folks. What better dish to file your taxes? Oh, you've already filed them. You didn't wait till today. Come on. Well, today would be a good day for Trump to release his taxes, and we'll get into a story on that a little bit later on in the broadcast. Oh, what a weekend, huh? Another weekend full of lies. We're way past WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks, never heard of WikiLeaks. Wasn't WikiLeaks one of the coffee boys? Hey, Stephen Miller. Hey, Don Jr. Wasn't that WikiLeaks a coffee boy? Lordy, there are tapes. So, good thing, too. I think we have tapes going from even before the election, where this fellow just lied through his teeth. Pretty much put a death threat out on Ilyan, and that was a bad thing to do. But mobsters do that. They do. It's normal. They don't know what's wrong with that. What, you can't put a hit on somebody? Jeez, it's not personal. I'm just doing business. And when you run government like a business like that, you know what's going to happen. And it is. People are getting a little peeved. We'll be talking a little bit about Mitch McConnell, if you want to talk about peeved. Trump wants to send asylum seekers to sanctuary cities, and sanctuary cities are saying, well, yeah, what's the prob? Bring it on. He goes, no, I'm sending murderers, rapists, drug dealers, and all the worst. And the sanctuary cities are going, yeah, moms and kids, we'll take them. Don't worry about it, Don. We know what to do. And they'll push them to just a warning. Just a warning. They'll probably be pushed to strive for citizenship, and then they'll vote. Exactly what Don was trying to prevent. And now, I think he's setting the stage. Of course, in his convoluted mind, there will be no more elections, at least not the kind that we have come to know and love. Well, let's say before the computerized voting machines. Oh, did you think that Ivanka getting a patent for a Chinese manufactured voting machine was just, I don't know, out of thin air? Had no coordination, had nothing to do with, the downfall of democracy? Well, I don't know. I don't know what you were thinking then. Hey, Trump blocks, Sarah Sanders says that, people asking for Trump's taxes, well, that puts everybody in jeopardy because then everybody's taxes are going to be asked for. And I'm thinking, well, isn't like just a random audit really that? I mean, come on. Totally ignoring the fact that the law that's on the books was put there because of the Teapot Dome scandal. Yes, another president who was completely corrupt. And they put those laws on the books for a reason. And the reason is exactly what Trump is doing right now, of course. The law doesn't mean anything to this guy. It never has. Never has. Look at the way he plays golf. And I am just sick that he has to destroy golf. I actually kind of like golf. It's one of the best events on TV that you can take a nap to. It's the best. And I was quite thrilled with Tiger Woods' victory yesterday at the Masters. That was quite a comeback. I mean, back surgery and that torque and twisting that you have to do to play the game. And he won the Masters. It was tempered a bit because he likes Trump. It's sort of like it's hard to watch a Roman Polanski movie. I loved Roman Polanski as a director, but after Sharon Tate was murdered, he kind of went off the deep end there. I gotta say, all right. And I have also a hard time watching Mel Gibson movies. It's tempered by the anti-Semitic tropes that he puts out in his real life. It's hard. It's hard. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to separate art from, people being dicks. It's sometimes hard. So, in this situation, I can't look at this guy in any other way without wondering what the hell is going on. Hey, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays? Well, of course, at the top, that was a breakdown on AM Joy about how the White House is given way too much time by the Democrats. Oh, let's compose another sternly worded letter about a delay. Stop delaying and start holding people like Steve Mnuchin in contempt. Do not talk to Auntie Maxine that way, buddy. I will say that I have a very profound and feigned shock that a Hollywood movie producer would act like a mobster. Do you really want a Hollywood producer to tell you where the money is? Yeah, he'll know where to put it, and he knows how to hide it. He's a Hollywood producer. How else can he have a blockbuster movie seen by billions and lose at the box office? How is that possible? Creative financing. And he knows how to creatively finance. He had the blank sheets of money, dollar bills, I believe. I think there were $1 bills. It could have been 20s. That he and his actress wife were holding up with that little smirk. We need to hold Steve Mnuchin in contempt. Hey, on the rest of the menu, in the Bistro Cafe, in another move to establish his white nationalist credibility with the international white nationalist community, Trump blocked the U.S. from nominating anyone to the UN Racism Committee. The first time. Yeah, because if you admit there's racism in the world, well then, somebody might argue against your white nationalism. I guess that's what he's doing. Trump has lost more cabinet members than any president in 25 years. Count back. And Mitch McConnell is living in fear he will cross Trump, and it will cost him re-election to the Senate. He is. He's living in fear, and he's acting out. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Trump's re-election campaign raised more than $30 million in the first quarter of 2019, far outpacing any Democratic contender in their fundraising. But Trump has a little extra money coming. I mean, where's all that money from the inaugural, for instance? I say there's a lot of laundered rubles in the GOP campaign coffers, and $30 million in Trump's first quarter of 2019 campaign coffers. Yeah, I wonder. Makes you wonder, huh? And while Trump continues to defy the law in contesting the House Ways and Means demand for his taxes, Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris released 15 years of her tax returns. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link at the right-ish of the page, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. If you would then take a gander to the left-ish of the page at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the contribute button. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring contribution allows this powerhouse of resistance to keep resisting as the founders originally intended. Indeed. And also, did you know that this is the 8th year of continuous broadcasting here at Netroots Radio 24/7, 365, except for small glitches like when there's a power outage in the state, at least this part of the state on the West Coast, and the modem has to be reset. Thank you very much. Took a little bit of time. I apologize for that this morning. The machines, I thought the machines weren't rebooting properly, and they were fine. They were broadcasting, or they were running what would have been on the queue, but the modem needed to be reset and cleared of all that cache. And so there was a little bit of radio silence there. I apologize. But for 8 years, Netroots Radio has been on the air resisting, and really what comes out of our own wallets and from you is what keeps this powerhouse of resistance resisting. So thank you for your recurring contribution. If you could afford maybe just a latte, the cost of a latte type coffee drink once a month, that goes a long way to helping us pay these bills and save some money to buy some new machines, because machines do wear out. Sometimes a lot faster than humans. Isn't that something? If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and those links and show notes are an integral part of this whole multimedia operation. And there's some other little tidbits of, I like to think, entertaining informational value that you can peruse while you're there. Indeed. It's not just politics now. We're serving food, and food for the soul here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Wow. I then try to get the show notes and links diary links posted on social media very quickly in that 10-minute period before showtime. It's a scramble. Let's see, if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeart, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Mixed in with all the rest. I think I'm in all the rest, of course. Okay. Well, let's look at this. Oh, before we get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, I want to give a shout out and thanks to folks who reached out to me. I don't know what it is about me to embrace this confessional of life. Maybe because I was attracted to confessional literature from early on in my existence, and even pursued a study of it at a university. So I just want to say thank you for reaching out. I'm not as messed up as it seems. Oh, yes, I am. I'm messed up. Who wouldn't be? Who wouldn't be? But I also have to realize that maybe my interpretation of what's going on might be skewed too because of an altered state brought on by grief. And I have to be mindful of not pulling at straws and trying to justify whatever belief I may have. So maybe I'm making mountains out of molehills too, and I have to be aware of that. Now, there was a mountain made out of a molehill over the weekend. Threats were levied and demands were demanded, and things seem to have calmed down. I like to believe cooler heads prevailed. Better angels were there. Well, all that said, I really do appreciate folks reaching out, and I love you back, really. All right, well, let's take a look at this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Comes our way out of Think Progress by Casey Michelle. Now, I saw him on a appearance on one of the cable news shows, and I'm thinking maybe it's not Michelle, it might be Michael. I'm going to have to check that out again. I apologize, Casey. Well, for the first time in years, the United Nations Committee on Racism will not contain anyone from the United States. According to a report from Politico this weekend, the White House blocked the renomination of human rights lawyer Gay McDougall, who had served on the committee since 2015. Oh no, she was the guy just found out an Obama person in a racism committee on the UN. They're going to say that all white people are racist. Don't they know that there's a white genocide going on right now? Every brown and black person is trying to kill us in our sleep. Yeah, and he's got Mein Kampf right there at the bedstand too, to justify every single thing that he decides. Well, the White House has not announced why it failed to renominate McDougall or why it opted not to nominate anyone else to the 18-member commission. The State Department officials had already informed McDougall that she would be renominated before the White House abruptly nixed the move. And let me just dive into here to a little bit, because the White House is going, the State Department spoke to her? There's somebody left at the State Department? I thought we purged everybody out of there of any communicable communications. Communicable communications? It's Monday. And early, too. And they're saying, what? There's no way. No one at State has the authority to tell her that she's going to be renominated. And they had to then abruptly get a hold of her and say, sorry. McDougall, who was originally nominated by former President Barack Obama, is widely regarded as an expert on international human rights. Well, Sally Yates was an expert on a few things, and when she informed the White House of a certain goings-on between members of his administration in the Oval Office and Russia, she was duly fired. A holdover from the Obama administration, too, I might say. Holdover? Career employees? Okay. And here's this woman here who is an expert. They had no idea there was an expert on international human rights at the UN with under the U.S. auspices. And I got to tell you, when they found out, they scrambled to get her off. Now, the move comes as concerns about Trump's racist language and continuing appeal to racists across the country, and I would say around the world, continues to swell. Of course, he tweeted out these death threats on Representative Omar, And there are some who say that he got some pushback. There are some who say that Nancy Pelosi's pushback wasn't pushback enough, but I think it's the culmination of all of the pushback that has the effect that we need to make our voices heard. The failure to renominate McDougal also comes amidst 2 years of Trump's White House undercutting America's role in international bodies and agreements, from walking away from the Paris Climate Accords to abandoning the Iranian nuclear deal to even withdrawing from the UN International Court of Justice and Human Rights Council. The Trump administration has steadily eroded American standing in multi-nation bodies. Yes, feature, not a bug. And now, without a member nominated to the UN's Commission on Combating Racism, the most openly racist administration in decades has only further entrenched its policy preferences, which is a nice way of saying, hey, there's a new sheriff in town, and they don't call it the White House for nothing. The great Oliver Willis of Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Trump's decision to purge Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen highlights his administration's uniquely disastrous cabinet, from which he has lost more officials than any president in 25 years. All told, 15 Trump cabinet members have left since he took office, which is higher than any president going back to Clinton, despite Trump's being in office for a shorter period of time. For comparison, over 8 years of their presidencies, Clinton had 12 cabinet departures, W. Bush had 4, and President Barack Obama had 9. Trump has been president for less than 2.5 years, and he has 15 cabinet members. The Nielsen purge was accompanied by the removal of Secret Service head Randolph Ailes, along with Claire Grady, second in command at Homeland Security, and Ron Vitiello, acting director of ICE. Adam Schiff, Democratic representative of California, cataloged the vacancies with a tweet noting that Defense Secretary, DHS Secretary, UN Ambassador, FEMA Director, Secret Service Director, ICE Director, and DHS Deputy are current open roles that all lack permanent leaders. Well, look, it's a hub and spoke model, all right? Trump is the hub, and everybody else is the spokes, and they all come into the middle of the hub and tell Trump what's up, and Trump makes the decisions and spins out the orders. Well, I can go on with that metaphor for a long time. I better not. Let's see. And then present but accounted for, Adam Schiff said, summing things up. One of the major problems with Trump's cabinet is that they are corrupt in the same mold that he is. Remember, his former Health and Human Services Secretary racked up thousands of dollars in luxury travel, as did his Interior Secretary. And then people out there will say, yeah, well, which one? Even when corrupt cabinet officials have been ousted, not because of Trump having ethical guidelines, but because they generated negative headlines, they have been replaced with other similarly corrupt figures. It has been a rolling disaster that continually worsens. In just 2 years in office, Trump is far more volatile than his two immediate predecessors, Obama and Bush. He has also still failed to nominate anyone to 140 key executive branch positions. Trump and his ally, Mitch McConnell, have often complained about Democrats opposing his nominations, but you cannot confirm someone if there is not a nomination. The leadership vacuum Trump has created is compounded with his racist impulses, in which even his already compromised officials like Nielsen, Sieg Heil, who have executed his most inhumane policies, still cannot please him. You know, when the Nazis are not Nazi enough for the Nazis, you know we got a lot more Nazi coming. The net result is that America lacks serious leaders who know what the hell they are doing, in this reporter's opinion, and instead, the country is left to rely on Trump's consistent cluelessness. Of course, we're going to be going a little bit into our break period before we head off to the chef's table here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. But that's all right. I'm chef owner. It's a salon. We can do what we want. And we are. The great Sarah K. Burris of Raw Story brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Mitch McConnell has spent the better part of 2 years walking on eggshells around Trump. According to the New York Times, I heard the New York Times is going to be gone in less than 8 years, according to Trump. And he knows all about branding. Did you hear what he said about Boeing today? Yeah, he says that Boeing just needs to know how to brand better because he knows. Well, he did say, what do I know about branding? And I answered him, yeah, what do you know? You got kicked out of the Sharper Image. It's kind of hard to do that. Well, according to the New York Times, McConnell is terrified that Trump will turn against him and destroy his upcoming re-election. Well, I didn't think that Mitch was that smart, but he is. He's a calculating turtle, isn't he? To make matters worse, in McConnell's state, the value of Obamacare has been a substantial help, which pits McConnell's constituents against their fearful senator. The same can be said for Social Security and Medicare, both of which Trump's budget would cut. Wow, conveniently, too. Now, McConnell's approach is rooted in his personal political realities. He cannot afford to have Trump, whose support with the party's base remain solid, turn on him, the Times reported. Well, why don't they turn on Trump, too? I mean, Trump wants to destroy everything that's America, plus, yeah, keep your hands off their Medicare. As of late, McConnell is begging his Republican caucus to try and talk Trump out of appointing Stephen Moore and Herman Cain to the Federal Reserve. Well, Herman Cain has withdrawn his name from the nomination because he found out there's not enough women on the Fed to sexually abuse on the job. It wasn't worth his while. When the request was made last week, it was unclear why McConnell couldn't talk to Trump himself, but the Times made it clear that the top senator is terrified. Well, who wouldn't? Because this guy's a mobster. I don't know, maybe he saw Patriot games and he doesn't want to have the pickaxe part of a pickaxe in the back of your head while you're having, cold hamburgers in the Oval Office. Trump does what he sees on TV. Mr. Trump has mostly spared Mr. McConnell the scorching disdain he had for former Speaker Paul Ryan, who had criticized Mr. Trump's personal behavior, wrote the Times. Trump has told people that he considered Mr. McConnell stiff and boring, but that's about it. McConnell's other problem is that his wife is deeply entrenched in Trump's cabinet. Elaine Chao, Trump's transportation secretary, is one of the very few left from the original appointees, and even fewer in the cabinet, and that's because her family is the big shipping magnate from China. And do you think it's only the Russians that have stuff on them? Really? All right, let's get to our break. And we can only hope that Mitch McConnell and Trump will take each other down like the dinosaurs, like T-Rex and the Stegosaurus. They're like fighting. And then the humans get to escape. Let's get to our break, and when we come back from the break, we are going to go through weather from around the world, and my God, do we have weather. And we're going to finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, I only have 2 minutes to tell you why. I know that Robin Bissell, European-American director of The Best of Enemies, wants this movie to be a reconciliation film. It's the true story of black activist Ann Atwater in early 1970s Durham, North Carolina, becoming friends with C.P. Ellis, the Durham Ku Klux Klan head. And I know Bissell wants so desperately to use this story to speak to today's racial divides that have risen like a sleeping giant. I know, but I only have 2 minutes to tell you why. I know we expect it's a story about both of them, but the movie prioritizes the perspective and thus the struggles of Ellis over Atwater. I know the first quarter of the movie bounces back and forth, Ellis and Atwater in parallel scenes, but all of Ellis' scenes feel longer and seek to humanize him. Not so with Atwater. We learn Ellis cares about his community and his family. We learn that Atwater is mean, tough, and angry. I mean, I could go scene by scene, but I only have 2 minutes to tell you why. So the first half of the movie invites us to counter our assumptions about Ellis, but swerves dangerously close to making Atwater the stereotype of the angry black woman. And since the first half of the movie doesn't go into detail about what the Klan specifically believes and how their handshake collusion with local white businesses and local white government has disenfranchised Durham's black community for generations, we have no emotional connection as to why Atwater and her people are so angry, and thus no basis for empathy with her. To make it worse, scene after scene with Ellis invites us into his inner world. We see him pause and think and consider. We see Atwater lash out and react. It's not until halfway through the movie that we get a moment of Atwater's self-reflection, and a camera pan reveals Ellis watching her, turning it into yet another moment on his journey. And that was the last straw. That's why. That's why I walked out. I know. I'm sorry. I'm going off on a movie I only saw a little more than half of. So go, see it, tell me I'm wrong, catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube. This has been Take Two Movie Review, and I'm sorry. I just couldn't take it.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. There's solid and there's liquid, and now there's something in between called chain melt.
At an atomic level, you have this interaction and this mix-up between liquid and solid.
Andreas Hermann is a condensed matter physicist at the University of Edinburgh. What he and his team have discovered, using computer simulations, is that under certain pressures and temperatures, potassium can be both liquid and solid at the same time. Specifically, they squashed simulated potassium atoms with really extreme pressures, 200 to 400,000 atmospheres. That's at least 200 times greater than the pressure in the depths of the Mariana Trench. At that pressure, the atoms form two interlocking crystal lattices. Add heat to that, you don't need too much, just a little bit above the boiling point of water, and one of those lattices begins to melt, while the other remains solid. And voila, chain melt. The details are in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Hermann says there's no reason to stop at potassium either. Half a dozen other elements have this crystal structure too. As for what we'll do with them,
so we haven't really looked for any applications. It's quite fundamental research, I would say.
One thing's for sure. Any real-world tests will face immense pressure. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, Show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
No more immigrants, no more refugees. The country is full, says Donald Trump. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. But not according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, which has announced that the country needs more immigrant workers and wants to issue more H-2B visas for temporary jobs in the United States. For immigrants, jobs in housekeeping and landscaping in restaurants, hotels, and amusement parks, including workers from Mexico and Guatemala, as well as Jamaica and South Africa.
Some of us are illegal, some are not wanted. Our work contracts out and we have to move.
As a senior immigration analyst at the Cato Institute said, on one hand, we need more people because the country's economy is booming. And on the other hand, we say the country is full, go back. It's impossible to reconcile those positions. There is, of course, a larger point here beyond the issue of worker visas. And that is that immigrants are not the enemy of the country, as Trump insists, but rather the lifeblood of our nation and our democracy.
Adios, mis amigos, Jesus Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane, and all they will call you will be deportee.
This ACLU Minute is inspired by the enduring words of the songwriter Woody Guthrie, and the voices of Arlo and Emmylou Harris.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. It was opening day of a truly new baseball season. 14,000 black baseball fans had come to Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, making up more than half of the crowd. They let out an exuberant cheer as Jackie Robinson, the first ball player to break the color barrier, ran onto the field. But do you know what led to that historic moment? For years, black community leaders and writers at black newspapers had led the call demanding baseball's integration. The New York Trade Union Athletic Association also joined the fight. The TUAA organized sports programs for 300,000 union members. In 1940, they launched the Committee to End Jim Crow Baseball. That July, they hosted a labor sports carnival at the New York World's Fair. The theme for the event was Ending Jim Crow Baseball. Racially integrated teams played a series of baseball games. The committee collected more than 10,000 signatures to end baseball's long system of segregation. Civil rights and union leaders held pickets at baseball stadiums in New York and Chicago, where they collected more than 1 million signatures. This grassroots community organizing brought attention to the racial barrier erected around America's pastime. Finally, their efforts paid off when the part owner and general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey, signed Jackie Robinson to play for the Dodgers. Robinson often faced discrimination from other teams and fans during his career. But despite this harassment, he was named Rookie of the Year in 1947, National League MVP in 1949, and was named to the All-Star team 6 times. And so, each year on this day, Major League Baseball celebrates Jackie Robinson Day. Players wear the number 42 in honor of Jackie Robinson.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labor.
This is a Radio Labor report recorded on April 15th, 2019. I'm Mark Boulanger. Without a doubt, the people who will be most affected by changes induced by new technological automation are young people. And one of the sectors which will see the most dramatic changes is transportation, with driverless cars, private car sharing companies such as Uber, and completely automated ports and airlines. To find out more about how new technologies will affect young people in the transportation sector, I talked to Baker Kondakji. Ms. Kondakji is the Young Transport Workers Officer for the International Transport Workers Federation. The ITF has 20 million members who belong to unions in 147 countries. I asked Ms. Kondakji how many young people are likely to be affected by new automation technologies in the next few years.
It's a bit challenging to gather hard data on young workers, but the information that we have so far is that there will be some sort of sectoral imbalance. Young workers disproportionately work in sectors most affected by these new technologies, and the highest intensity is going to be in the manufacturing industries, and followed by agriculture, hospitality and retail, and then transport, comms, and construction. We're talking about hundreds of millions of young workers around the world, but my focus is on transport workers, given, we are looking at the young workers issues from an ITF perspective.
What will be some of the effects of new automation technologies on ITF members?
Well, for us, we are talking to our affiliates on digitalization as a choice, that, government, unions, and employers decide pace and effect. Transport can be more sustainable and efficient without automation, and thousands of automated private vehicles are less efficient than public transport. Automated ports can be shut down by small technical failures, and automation is more expensive than decent work in most of the world. So it's an opportunity for unions, regardless of whether we see digitalization is good or bad. It's an opportunity for us to organize, to campaign, and demand policy changes. Because bad governance would mean digital inequality. And what happens when we do not choose and fight for our future? It's basically four main areas: income inequality, youth inequality, gender inequality, and then there's the urban-rural divide. So to focus specifically on the youth inequality bit, we're looking at de-skilled young workers. We have 20 to 40% of young worker job tasks could be changed by automation, or casualized, or intensified, or lower paid, and moving to other sectors. We have the informal work and the platform economy. Young already suffer from digital employment models, and platform working is forecast to be worth nearly $63 billion by 2022. And 77% of working youth are in informal jobs, compared with 58% of working adults. Of course, there's also the issue of the job migration. Migration is a youth issue, as 70% of international migrants are under the age of 30. We also have educational inequality. Poorer students are 3 times less likely to achieve a minimum qualification in science. Young women suffer the most as well. We have 37% of young women are in the labor force, compared to 54% of young men. And young women are 20% less likely to use our own digital tech than young men. We have to have access to education and training for these workers. We have to have state intervention and regulation changes. We have to establish the rules and the ethics and new models of capital ownership. And of course, not to forget the environmental safeguards and labor rights. So basically, it should be a collective action to address the challenges of these new technologies, because today's and tomorrow's youth do deserve better.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. It looks like we will be getting to a high, just about 55, so we'll call it mid-50s. How's that? Overnight lows tonight in the mid to low 40s. We will be increasing in temperature over the next several days. Tomorrow we're going to be topping at about the mid-60s. And then it looks like maybe Wednesday we will be in the mid-70s. And then by Thursday we should have a topping temperature of about 80 to 83. And then we'll come back down a little bit into the mid-70s. In the midst of this, we will have some rain. We have quite a bit of rain on its way right now. The winds are currently out of, just a tad into the south-southeast, and they will be shifting out of the south. They will not be shifting. They will be increasing because they're currently a negligible 1 to 2 miles per hour. Will be increasing to 5 to 10 miles per hour, continuing out of the southeast, bringing with it just a little bit over a 1/4 inch of rain, and that will be occurring in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then the winds will shift tonight out of the south-southwest with a decreasing amount of rain, and then ever increasing tomorrow, or decreasing tomorrow, though a small smattering at night. And then Wednesday, when we're in our mid-70s range, we're expecting some more rain. Just about, it looks like something less than a 1/4 inch, so we'll see how that goes. All right, grass pollen is considered low. The air quality index is in the good range at 25 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is in the moderate cautionary range of 4. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.56 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at a stunning 97%. I like to say stunning and 97 in the same sentence. It's fun. And percent, too. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Hey, it's Monday. Alrighty. London is 56 and fair. Paris is 61 and sunny. Paris. In the spring. Rome is 69 and partly cloudy, and they are looking at quite a bit of rain and a flood alert, so take care if you happen to be in Rome today. Kiev is 44 and cloudy. Kabul is 51 with rain. Hong Kong is 68 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 54 and clear with a wind advisory. Sydney, Australia is 62 and fair. San Francisco, California is 48 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 64 degrees, mostly cloudy with a weather advisory, and it will be coming up in just a moment. And I believe it will be a small craft advisory or winds. And indeed, that's what it is. So look out for winds in New York today. And that is winds. You got a gale warning. Hold on to your hats. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations on somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees from Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And I have an issue with Reuters. They had a story over the weekend purporting to know all about what the Mueller report has said just from Barr's proclamations on it, and made sweeping analyses and generalizations about a report that Mueller only quoted less than 18 words of. So Reuters, Stop it. Okay, in this article, Donald Trump's re-election campaign raised more than $30 million in the first quarter, and far outpacing the total raised by individual Democratic candidates during that period. Trump's first quarter haul, leaving his 2020 re-election effort with $40.8 million in cash, showed Republican donors were willing to invest in him as he gurs for what is likely to be a difficult bid for a second term. Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris have led the field of Democratic contenders in fundraising so far, raising $18.2 million for Bernie and $12 million for Kamala Harris, respectively, in the first quarter. And Sanders' campaign said it received an average donation of $20 during the first quarter. The Trump campaign said its average donation was about $34.26, and that nearly 99% of its donations were $200 or less. The Republican National Committee brought in $45.8 million in the first quarter. Trump's re-election campaign is raising money alongside the RNC in what is called a Trump victory effort. Well, how Teutonic of them. How so very Teutonic.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Amanda Becker of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Democratic U.S. Senator Kamala Harris released 15 years of her tax returns through 2018, offering the most complete look to date at a presidential candidate's finances. Harris held public office during the years of 2004 through 2018. With her husband, Douglas Emhoff, an attorney, she had a combined adjusted gross income in 2018 of about $1.89 million and paid total taxes of about $697,000, according to the returns. Trump doesn't want you to know what his are because he's probably not paying taxes, and he's taking every dodge there is, and all of them are illegal. Harris and Emhoff, who have filed joint tax returns since marrying in 2014, have paid more than $2.2 million in federal taxes over the past 5 years at an average effective tax rate of 32.6%. Harris's release of her tax filings follows that of fellow White House contenders like Kirsten Gillibrand and Elizabeth Warren. Senator Bernie Sanders has said he will release his tax filings this week. And, of course, tax day is today. Democrats in the 2020 race have released their tax returns as Republican Donald Trump resists moves by congressional investigators to review his tax filings and probes related to his businesses and Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. And Trump is the first modern U.S. president not to release his tax returns to the public. What are you hiding, Donnie Two Scoops? What are you hiding? After taking control of the House of Representatives in the 2018 elections, Democrats passed a bill that would require presidential candidates to release their tax returns. It has not been voted on by the Senate, which is controlled by Republicans, but Harris supports such legislation. Before her marriage to Emhoff, most of the income Harris reported each year was from the salary she earned as California's Attorney General. And before that, as San Francisco's district attorney. In other words, she was a public servant, and Trump was sucking at the public trough. Indeed. Donnie, release your taxes. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you know Netroots Radio will be broadcasting on. We're going to meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.